Week 7, final video, writing linear equations. Pretty simple concept. Hope everyone's doing well, and let's just jump in, not waste any time. So we discussed in week 6 that the formula, the equation for a line is y equals mx plus b. This is one form, one equation that is used to represent a line. This form is called slope intercept form. So all of our equations need to look like y equals mx plus b. When you're in 8th grade, you'll learn standard form and point slope form. So let's take a look at, if I just give you an equation right off the bat. So we need to get our equation to look like y equals. So I need my equation to look like that. Right now I have a positive 2x being added to y. So I have to get rid of this 2x. And since it's positive, the opposite of a positive is a negative. What you do to one side of the equal sign, you have to do to the other. These are a neutral pair, so those basically eliminate. Those are gone. And you can see we're left with y equals negative 2x minus 5. Now don't even think for a second to combine those. They're not like terms, so you won't be able to combine those. And there's your answer. Y equals negative 2x minus 5. So again, we have this x that is being now subtracted by y. And since this x is positive, the opposite of a positive x is a negative x. What you do to one side of the equal sign, you have to do to the other. These x's form a neutral pair. So the x's are eliminated. So now what I have is negative y minus x, positive 2/3. Now, this does not say y equals. This says negative y equals. So now I have to get rid of this negative sign. And the only way to get rid of this negative sign is to take the opposite of this. And if I take the opposite of this y, negative y, I have to do that to every other term. Another thing you can think of is you can divide this by negative 1. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. So basically, if I divide this by negative 1, divide that by negative 1, and divide that by negative 1, I'll get y equals x minus 2/3. These negatives cancel out, these negatives cancel out, and signs are different, so your answer is a negative. Or you can just say to yourself, I need to get rid of this negative y, so I'm going to do the opposite. What's the opposite of a negative? Positive. What's the opposite of a negative? Positive. What's the opposite of a positive? Negative. So there's two ways to kind of think about it. Ultimately, you're going to get the same answer. It's just, do you want to divide everything by negative 1, or would you rather just do the opposite of every single term? You only do this, though, when the y is negative. We didn't do it in the first example because the y was positive. We have a positive 4/5 x being added to the 4y, so we have to get rid of the 4/5 x. And since it's positive, the opposite is a negative. positive 4/5 and a negative 4/5 make 0. So now we are left with a positive 4y, a negative 4/5 x, and a negative 16. The y is not by itself. There is a 4 being multiplied to it. Since 4 is being multiplied to y, the opposite of multiplying by 4 is to divide by 4. Now I have to divide every term by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So we're left with 1y. 4/5 divided by 4. Dividing by 4 is the same as multiplying by 1/4. So 4/5 divided by 4 is the same as 4/5 times 1/4. Keep, change, flip. Or you can find a common denominator. Either way, you're going to get a negative 1/5 x. And then negative 16 divided by 4 is negative 4. And so if you're given an equation, that's how you would write your answer in slope-intercept form. Now, what if I gave you a graph? We're just going to use a coordinate plane with 5s. Okay? We know our answer has to be y equals mx plus b. I always start with the y-intercept. The y-intercept is at negative 2. So I'm going to write down negative 2. Now from here, I'm going to do my rise over run. I'm going to find the slope. And slope is y over x. Rise over run. It's a ratio. So I'll start at the y-intercept and I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4. So I went up 4. And I went to the right 1, 2, 3. And there you have it. You have y equals 4/3 x minus 2. Do one more of these. Whoops, not a very straight line. My apologies. Okay. Needs to be y equals mx plus b. Start with the y-intercept. The y-intercept is at positive 5. The y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. Now our slope. Oh, I didn't want to do that. All right, that's all right. We'll do one more. Start here, we go down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I go to the left. 1, 2. So our answer is going to be y equals 4x plus 5. Now, because I went down, I have to put a negative 8. Because I went to the left, I have to put a negative 2. And 8 divided by 2 is 4. All right, let's do one more of these. Okay, so for this one, our line touches the y-axis at the origin, which is 0. So we're not going to put the 0 out there. Now to find the slope, I start at the y-intercept, and I ended up going down 2. Because I went down, that's a negative. And then I went to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now because I went to the right, my answer is going to be positive. So that's why I put a positive 4 there. So now here's our answer. Y equals negative 2/4 x. And then in lowest terms, y equals negative 1/2 x. And finally, writing equations in slope-intercept form from a table. Okay, so let's find the slope. And if you remember, slope is a ratio of y over x. So all we have to do is find the y pattern. I went from 1 to 4. I went from 4 to 7. I went from 7 to 10. See how that's all constant? So that means my y is going to be positive 3. Now let's do the x. That's negative 3. That's negative 3. And that's negative 3. So then down here I'm going to put negative 3. Now to figure out where the y-intercept is, all you have to do is locate the 0 in the x column. Which is right there. Because when x is 0 and y is 4, that's where the line touches the y-axis. Now to write this in simplest form, we get y equals negative 1x plus 4. And then finally our last problem. From a table. Slope is rise over run, delta y over delta x. Our y values increase by 5. Our x values increase by 2. So that means our slope is 5 over 2. Locate the 0 in the x column. Our y-intercept is 6. And that's it. Hope you guys are having a good week, and we'll see you next week.